Everyone good? Everyone having a, yeah, good spring, good late spring. We have uh, downpours this afternoon, real horrible downpours, and coolish weather, but that's not going to last. So I guess we have to appreciate what we get. Um, let's begin. So a couple of things. Carolyn is not here. She is ill. Although she wrote me an email about something, and I really want to discuss it, and I wrote her a long email back about it. And then Kathy sent me an email, which I was over the moon about Kathy. I felt that it was just such a great observation. It's outstanding to me. So we'll get to that, but let's go to the physiology email first. So Carolyn wrote, as always, I've been working on my breathing when I can. For a while, I wanted to mention an aspect of this. I'm not sure I mentioned it before. I think it may have been in your class that it was mentioned about the correlation between areas of the lungs that maybe aren't getting much air and pneumonia. I think it was your class. Yes, but, I think it's so interesting, and you please all ponder this. Our minds, and I include myself in this, but for a long time, until we know better and we've had the experience, and I want to keep stressing that, breathing is about having an experience because it's very hard to understand. And we sort of think about it and talk about it conceptually rather than the actual physiology. So what it is about, it is not that the areas of the lungs are not getting enough air, although in a way you could think of it that way. It is the fact that carbon dioxide stays stuck in the lungs. And all infection in the lungs, and this, came from Carl, who obviously, as you know, worked with all those emphysema patients and pulmonologists, and, said all infection in the lungs comes from pockets of dead air. And what is dead air? It is the carbon dioxide that is still there. Now, remember, when we talk about that, you have to remember there's always going to be some what we call residual air left in the lungs. It has to be. Otherwise, the lungs would collapse. That's what lung collapse is. So that's always going to be there. But he made the point that all infection in the lungs comes from pockets of dead air. So you could argue that it is not getting oxygen in, but the reason it's not getting oxygen in is because the carbon dioxide isn't out. And class, what is it that gets rid of the carbon dioxide in the lungs? And that is the diaphragm. And the stronger the diaphragm becomes, the more carbon dioxide can leave the lungs. Because why? Because when the diaphragm role is to get rid of carbon dioxide, but mostly everyone, even normal, healthy people, start out with a very weak diaphragm with very, very minimal excursion. And the work that we try to do here, which is very hard and very demanding, is build a strength in the diaphragm so it can rise higher and higher in the chest cavity, getting rid of more carbon dioxide in the lungs. But man, is that hard to wrap your mind around. I don't blame, I've always said this, I don't blame anyone for getting confused about breathing. I just don't. It's until you've had the experience of it. And that's why we try to do as much hands-on. We'll do that tonight. But anyhow, let me go on. At any rate, a technique I learned way back in college, a kind of breath concentration work, has always been a touchstone for me. My body is asking me to do it more. I'm not sure I can adequately explain it in an email, though you basically watch where your breath wants to go. Similar, of course, in a way to your work. And sometimes this may include not releasing the breath immediately. I want to read that again. You basically watch where your breath wants to go. And sometimes this may include not releasing the breath immediately. So if you think of physiology, oxygen comes from outside of us, our atmosphere. It enters nose and mouth, makes its way down the tracheal tube into the lungs and, the bronchioles and all of that. When the rib cage is constricted, when the exhalation hasn't been full, very minimal air is going to get into the lungs. So it's not really, listen, imagery is wonderful and it's helpful and relaxing, all those things. But I think if you really are committed to understanding the physiology of breathing and the strength of the diaphragm, you have to think about it in the right way, physiologically. You just have to. And I think that is where, so many singers and musicians, as well as ill people, went to Carl Stowe. And even you think of somebody like Jessie Norman, who was the queen of the Metropolitan Opera, and she was devoted to Carl Stowe. I mean, he really taught us about the diaphragm and how to build the strength in the diaphragm. And to me, absolutely remarkable. Sometimes there is even additional air that the lungs seem to want, and an opening which then happens, an area perhaps which hasn't been really receiving much air, I surmise. You then watch as you allow the lungs to expel without necessarily dictating at all how much air there that is. So this is also something to experiment with, I think. Let's be clear, the lungs do not expel air. What does? The diaphragm. Pressure of the diaphragm. There is some elasticity in the lungs, but it's not like the elasticity in the diaphragm. So it's the diaphragm that is, I always think it's almost like an elevator, right? It's there underneath the lungs. It's separating your abdomen from your chest, your lungs, and it's pushing bottom of the lobes first, and it's pushing up. So it is not the lungs that expel air. And then you see how the next breath, the air enters. Of course, the breaths change as different areas receive air. Breathing is always changing. It just does. Some breaths are shallower than others. It just the normal way of things. Of course, the breath changes as different areas receive air. Each breath may or may not be radically different depending on the day, person, life, etc. Though there is something quite healing I find about doing this work. So just, contemplate that and understand that there are many, many, many breathing techniques. There are, and I'm going to quote the Carl Stowe dogma, and it sounds very dogmatic, but it's true. He would say, there is a right way and a wrong way to breathe. A right way and a wrong way to breathe. And, you always have to go back to, how is this body constructed? How is it constructed? There's breathing in rebirthing, which is basically hyperventilation, building up cyanosis in the tissues, and it takes you into sort of almost a hallucinogenic state. Holotropic breathing was designed for that. That was very big at Esalen, Stan Groff at one time, going back years. And I remember one of our trainees, he was a retired dentist, Sam Reiser, and he'd gone to Esalen and tried to do holotropic breathing, and he was just too tense. He couldn't do it at all. And so they gave him a few little LSD so that he could go off and have a trip and not do the holotropic breathing. So just be clear, we're constantly going to be talking about it, but what is the physiology? Go back to the basics. What is it that you want to do? And the hardest work of all is understanding the body's ability to breathe you, understanding how to get your diaphragm to move. So maybe we use that as sort of a little bit of a focus. And then I did write, as I said, a lengthy email back to Carolyn, basically saying, I just said to you, and saying, sent me back letters to say she wasn't coming tonight because she was ill. And she said, I've been meaning to share with you that when I swim, I often do so underwater. I met a woman who swims, dances with wild dolphins, and is able to hold her breath for something like 7 minutes. What do you think? I think you mentioned recently something about swimming and breath holding, that maybe there are exceptions to every rule. Well, in general, it is not healthy to hold your breath. And when you swim, and Carl, worked with the swim team at Yale, and that was how they coined that expression, Dr. Breath. They would say, Dr. Breath is coming today. And you want to keep, and elite swimmers understand this, you keep the exhalation going. Surprising, isn't it? I mean, I grew up swimming, Pine Knoll Swim School. And I certainly held my breath. I wasn't dissuaded from that. I don't even think they talked about it. So I don't know. I guess we did the crawl. That was it. We would crawl and we would turn our head and let breath in that way. I think that was it, wasn't it? Yeah. So anyhow, Aida's here. This is the email that thrilled me so much from Kathy. So I'll read the whole thing. Recently, I decided to explore getting outside myself and use my ear to hear what comes out of me. And that is huge in itself. That is huge in itself. When we are able to, and we don't understand this until we do. I'm really saying that a lot, but I really mean that. How do we get an ear outside our heads, the hearing in? You may not understand it or feel it in yourself, but we tend to hear inside. We hear, that's why it's so shocking for people when they hear their voice on a recording, because they are used to hearing their voice inside their head, and to actually hear what their actual voice sounds like is quite a shock. But through everything we're doing, especially hearing those overtones when we do our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, we start to get our ear to move outside. Or when we start to talk about the curious ear, hearing something being whispered to us, anything. We'll talk more about that, but that is unbeatable, because the moment you can get your ear outside, hearing yourself, you're connecting and you integrate the muscles of the body, and that is, to me, phenomenal. When we hear inside our heads, we're in delay mode. But so that was terrific, Kathy, even there. I began with the so-so-sos. The first thing that happens is the proverbial jump of the throat, which is so quick to take over and get it done. I mean, that was just wonderful to hear that. I realize this is the moment of the real practice. Oh, Kathy, is it ever? Number one, it is the sensitivity to know that you jump to the throat. You have no idea. Sometimes it takes people years, and sometimes they never have an awareness of that, of what is default. You may say it every single lesson to them. Many, many times during the lesson, you're in your throat, you're in your throat, you're starting from the throat, you're starting from the back of the throat. Don't take breath before you start, anything. But the ability to focus on that is exceptional. So that just thrilled me. The throat has been on autopilot for far too long. Instead of giving into it, I need to pause, give the space and silence to allow something else, the ear, to become my someone else. Absolutely. Absolutely. Every time you are able to stop a habitual reaction to a stimulus, which is exactly what Kathy is describing, it allows a new behavior to take over. Kathy, that's the essence of the Alexander technique, you know. Is that word inhibition. That's a physiological word the physiologists use, that you are able to recognize a habitual reaction to a stimulus and stop it before it does it. You know, the jumping out of the chair. If you're doing chair work with a student, and every single time they jump. And then eventually you recognize in yourself, you know, you're the student, as I was, the jumping. And then you are able to almost feel it before you're going to do it. And you're able to stop it. That's called inhibition. In not the Freudian sense. This allows curiosity to kick in. Of course, this is unfamiliar to my brain and body, so I must be patient. Yes. My question is, if I stop paying attention to that first nudge of my throat and refuse to give it power and doing, and instead wait with curiosity and openness, even if there is no audible voice coming out of me, in other words, if I ignore and refuse doing the wrong thing, the throat, will it then clear the path for the right thing? You're outside myself to have it. Well, they answered your question. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, you know, sometimes when people are singing and they push to get the high note and push to get it, and I'll say, no, drop it away, hear it, or whatever. And it doesn't matter if nothing comes out. It doesn't matter if nothing comes out, because you are making the connections, you are making a demand to the right muscles, to the diaphragm. You have no idea. I read this and it was just so beautiful to me to have somebody really come to that realization, that understanding. And it's exactly what Alexander did. That was his process over 10 years of observation. He would notice that every single time, because, you know, he would, spoken recitalist, he would do a recital, he'd lose his voice. Go to doctors, they'd prescribe a rest cure, he would do the rest cure, he would be fine, he'd get up and recite, and by the end of the recitation, you know, the old days of doing this sort of thing, Shakespeare and whatnot, he would be hoarse again. And finally he had it, and he said, there must be something, to the doctors, there must be something I am doing that's causing this. And they said, yes, but we have no idea what that might be. So he observed himself, and with mirrors, and he saw that every single time he would go to recite, he would do this. Suck in air, pull down his chin, and grip like that. And then he noticed that he was doing it when he wasn't reciting, when he was just doing simple speaking. And so he worked the way that Kathy was talking about. He would give himself a signal to speak, and then he wouldn't speak. And in that way, he was able to catch himself every time. As Kathy said, there's the catch, the jump to the throat. Really something, isn't it? Kathy, wonderful work. But you know, you think about this all the time. I know you do. And it shows. So thoughts about that, anything, either from what Carolyn wrote, breathing, anything at all, especially something that might be perplexing as I read all that and lectured away, hectored away.
I'm really curious about the speaking, the ear outside yourself. How do you even get there? I mean, I know it's the work, but
Yeah, well, we'll play, you know, on Wednesday. When I do the counts with you, and this is, you know, what's wonderful about working together with somebody one-on-one, because we can focus on what I would call the third person, right? We focus on something that is outside ourselves. And when we are both aligned and on breath, on breath, that's the lingo, we will hit a series of overtones and we begin to focus our ear. So you all know the story, that doesn't. When I was working with Carl Stow, when I would tape every lesson, and when I've said this also, all of you, repeat my stories. I went to Carl, I had been singing professionally for 20 years, but I knew there was something missing. I knew it. And I had thought it had to do with the breathing. And I went to Carl, and it was incredible for me. And we would do what we do in class, do the counts together. And he would talk and he would say there is a tonality in the sound, in the voice, when it is rooted on breath, when it is supported by the diaphragm, right? It's all vocal terminology, but the support of the diaphragm, meaning that instead of the collapse of the diaphragm and the speaking in the throat, that diaphragm can stay elevated and support air pressure in the lungs, keep the air pressure in the lungs. And so we would tape every lesson. He would do it with me, the counts, and I would go home and I would say, what is it that Carl is hearing? What is he hearing? Because when I would do it with him, it was such an extraordinary experience of merging with someone, merging with sound, not with Carl, not with someone, the merging with sound, the being, I felt like I was being caressed, blanketed and supported by overtones. It was the most incredible experience. He had a person who came to him and said, Carl, I'll spend every last cent I have to come to you to have this experience, because it was just extraordinary. You felt like the walls, and you felt like you were doing nothing, and the walls would reverberate. So I would begin to train my ear to hear that. So when I was by myself and did my practice and did my counts, my ear automatically went to that. And then I would have a great lesson with him. And then I would get up, be on the table doing all the stuff. And I would go to put on my shoes and chat with him. And he would bring to my awareness that I was losing my support, that I went right back down. And then I worked on that too, just normal speaking. I would go home, read a text or something, read a short passage or something, and try to hear that. And I don't know if neurophysiologically this is correct, but this is how I describe what happened to me. I felt that I changed something in my oral appreciation, where I could hear this voice rise out of me on breath. I could hear that, and it changed something in my brain so that first time, every time I was there. So I didn't go back to the old way of being in my throat. Now, I've had students who, when they have a little tiny taste of that, will say, I had one student said, I sound artificial. I sound, yeah, Hermine is smiling. I sound like an actress, because we are so used to hearing our voice inside our heads that when we hear this freedom, and let's be clear on what the freedom is simply a stream of air vibrating the vocal cords. Period. There is not something called voice. I mean, there is, but there isn't. So if you're working with voice, I'm doing vocal exercises, let's say, my voice, you're always going to be from here up. Or you'll try to, you'll hear language of, get your voice in your body. So then people try to have a sound, try to put their voice in their body. But it's not that. You've got these two little thin ligaments called vocal cords, and they need a steady supply of air in order to vibrate them. And articulation of words is the speed of breath, because speech is a reflex. So it's pretty miraculous. The whole thing is very miraculous. It's only when we intrude, but we're going to intrude until we develop the strength to have that support. So it really comes down to that. It comes down to, when do things start to change for us? And I would, Kathy, I haven't seen you in a while, and we never worked in person anyhow. We were only on Zoom. But I would dare say that things have strengthened in you. So let's fool with
So,
that.
Jean, I have a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Because that was one of my questions that I held for several weeks, and this is it just that the vocal cords are vibrating, or I mean, I know that when we live into the music, it's a way of integration. It's how the whole body is integrated, right? So, doesn't it have more to do also with the quality?
How we have, this is, the big one. And a huge responsibility for us, because we have to live what we're doing. We live it. Even if this is the simplicity of doing so. Our body is alive with time. If we go so, that isn't it. We're intruding. How we live something is what your audience, people outside of you, are going to hear in your voice.
And
That's an artist.
that has nothing to do with the quality. Has nothing to do with the vocal cord. No.
Well, you can have, as we've discussed many times, right? You can have this extraordinary instrument, and as Shakespeare said, a voice sound filled with sound and fury, signifying nothing. There are many, what we would call beautiful voices, and I hear them all the time at the studios where I teach, all around me, and there's nothing in them. Nothing. It's like a pianist being technically brilliant, and you sometimes hear that at the studios where I teach too. That, it's just like, where's the music? It's not moving your listener. In order to move our listeners, we have to move inside ourselves. We have to be responsive, whether it is to text or to song. Now, what is that? Physiologically, is the psoas muscles that communicate to the diaphragm, and that is the great, extraordinary mystery. That is the extraordinary, it's Stella Adler on Instagram. I seem to always get her, and I love it because, when you agree with somebody, you love the person. But, she will say, do not act words, act from your soul. And that's what it is, the psoas. Another thing I love, she said, don't speak in. Don't speak in. How many of you think you're speaking in? Everyone's raising their hand. But that's what it is. Now, what gets in the way of this? I'm not saying it's that simple. Let me just make myself big, and then you'll be off. There are things that are crucial, that either help us or hurt us or hinder us. And this is where we have to become super duper sensitive, just like Kathy was saying. Oh yes, speaking in Hermine, thank you so much. And I have those students at Columbia, and they sort of speak like that all the time. They speak like that, and you're like, and I will say now, strong voice, because they talk here, because we're somehow very shy, and we're very depleted, and we're fearful of what we're going to say, our self-expression, all of that, instead of just being on breath. So that's the speaking. It's going inside. It's going inside like this, to speak. Usually to feel, that's what we're saying. But let's get back to the physiology. It is so important to understand what engages those core muscles that speak to the diaphragm, because without that, nothing can shift. And we were doomed to keep repeating and repeating and repeating trying to get better, but repeating and repeating and repeating. It's just the way it is. It just is. So if you're like this, right? Many students like that, down in the legs, unaware of what's going on. So you hear it instantly. I hope you can. You hear that I couldn't get that's speaking in Hermine. I couldn't get my voice out if I tried. If I was on stage and the director said, I can't hear you, I would start to push, and then I would feel fatigued at the end, and it's horrible even demonstrating it right now. And you hear the flatness in my tone. Hear the difference. The moment I'm here, you hear what comes through the voice. What I just said to Anne-Marie, you know me, you know my intention, right? That is what we call grounding. It's that energy. If I'm here, I could fake it, I guess, with my hand, but you see, there's no connection. Trying, but here, totally different. Remember, we used to let ourselves be bounced? That's still terrific to do, because that helps you understand, are you in those alignment muscles? Are you engaged? Are you there? When you're standing to practice playing the flute, how is your body? Are you, free in ankles, knees, and hips because you're letting the earth support you, or are you down in the legs? In which case, the psoas muscles can't communicate to the diaphragm. You've all heard this story too, but we will repeat it. There was somebody that came to me. She was a flautist. She was getting her doctorate at Rutgers, and very brilliant, incredibly brilliant. And she had developed disabling carpal tunnel syndrome, so that she couldn't play anymore. And she had a recital coming up. And so she came to me. And as I said, she was very brilliant musically, very, very, very brilliant. But she was unmusical. So when she would play, she would be technically correct. She would do all the runs, but it was so unmusical, it was just filled with tension. So I used to sit over there at the piano, and she would play over here. And I would say, you've got to make me dance. You have to make me dance. So when you can dance inside yourself, when you're living something inside yourself, you engage. But you cannot get that living going if you are down in the legs. And that is a hard thing. Kathy talked about feeling the jump into the throat. We have to be able to feel the going down into our legs, the deadening of our legs. When we are nervous, we will always go down. And so your practice, when you're not nervous, has to be, how does the earth support me? How can I just stand and not grip my body to maintain balance and let myself be swayed by the earth? And that's a very different experience from trying to feel being swayed. Notice the whole difference in my body. Look how much taller I look. I'll take anything. Right? But if I'm here trying to make myself, I look dead. Because I'm looking in trying to feel instead of being here. So I want to just go back, because it just came right into my mind again. I never think that I answered this correctly for Anne-Marie about the tone or beauty of a voice. But it is very true. There are some voices just from construction that are very beautiful. The sound, but then you hear people say, I wouldn't go across the street to hear them perform. Because it's just beauty, just a sound. But I would guarantee that if you're getting moved by something, it's because they are responding in time. And you remember when I said about the great jazz trumpet player Clark Terry, who said, I used to know horn players who were mean and nasty, and their sound was mean and nasty. It just has to be something something, the love has to come through. The love has to come through. The love for music. Can't be about singing. It's uninteresting. Singing. What? This, to me, that's ego. I mean, I used to, of course, think about that. You begin, you think, voice, 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 voice. Is my voice big enough? Is my voice bigger than the person down the hall? Can I sing higher notes than that person down the hall? That's what you do. Like, eventually you do grow up, hopefully. But you realize that there's something more. And the more you integrate as a person and also physically, the difference it is. So when we do the hiss, why is it important? What does that teach us? It teaches us, number one, what Kathy described, how our default is usually to jump to hiss. And if we're looking at ourselves, that's why it's lovely sometimes to practice in front of a mirror. It just is, because you can begin to look at yourself very objectively and non-confrontationally. But you don't have to, but you know, sometimes if you're brave enough, you can definitely do that. I do. But we want to feel when it is what we do with our singing. Do we jump? Do we go to default? Do we jump to make the sound of hiss? Or is our mind, are we taking the time for our mind to be crystal clear on what we want? What is it we want? What is the process? So what we talk about here, and I'll tell you what my process is, and maybe, you know, it will change in the ensuing years. But for quite a while, it is about the same thing, getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper for me of that place of connection, that place of grit, that place of core, that place of soul. You know, that is the motor, the intention, that anything that we want, but it's not conceptual. It is a physical feeling. And it is not a physical feeling we do. It's not trying to feel something. That's why I suggest always having hands on yourself. I do it on the rib cage because I can feel when I am here how the diaphragm gets engaged. It expands me, and at the end of that, it triggers the reflex inhalation, and air comes in through the nostrils into the trachea into the lungs. That's the simplicity. You're turning something on, and that is the hard work of uncovering that in yourself. It goes by many different words, right? The will, you know? Impulse, prana, chi, self-energization. But it's that. And it keeps the diaphragm engaged, elevated, holding the air in the lungs. So you don't need to hold your breath, because a strong diaphragm is going to not let all the air out on one whoosh. You know, that's what happens when people take breath before they do something. You know, they think that they have to, no matter what I say, and they'll go, and then the very first thing that happens, because you hear all the tension, is depletion. That's another huge habit that people have, that habits are unconscious, remember. There's nothing wrong with a person, it's just something that is very unconscious, the grabbing for breath before doing something. The stronger you get, the diaphragm becomes, the less you even think about that. Because you come to know that a strong diaphragm is going to keep you in exhalation mode all the time, and the inhalation will come in just when it wants to come in. As soon as you stop exhaling, the inhale will come in. And it's pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable that that's how it works. That's why we can sing the way we sing. Breath just came into me there. See, I pause for no reason, right? You pause, here it comes in. So, and you feel this beautiful round rib cage. I guess not particularly round, but it is, the diaphragm is the whole circumference of the waist, all here. And you feel that power. You've got this strong muscle organ inside that rib cage. That's the diaphragm. It's like this. It's a dome, right? And when we exhale, the dome rises. And then it flattens like that as air is pulled into the lungs. Inhalation is a reflex. Inhalation is a reflex. Phrenic nerve to the top of the diaphragm tells it to contract. So, one more time. Really, hands here. And, when you can go back to that, saying how intrigued she was about the voice outside the head. Part of what helps us understand that is being able to put hands on ourselves, right? Putting hands on ourselves without going inside to try to feel like this. See, now I'm inside my head and I'm trying to see and trying to feel. And you hear what it does to my voice. But when I can be outside myself and put hands on myself, as though I'm putting hands on a student, I stimulate the right muscles of the body. Go figure. That's how powerful. So, one more. So that one for me lasts longer and longer. Now you see what happens. Of course, I'm seated, so I'm stimulating this so as comfortably erect, all of that. But your diaphragm, the more you do this stuff, even on a day-to-day basis, you are going to find that you're going to be extending your exhalation, and that helps you understand building strength. Somebody just wrote a nice chat, so let's take a peek. Oh, Danica, hi. Yes, thank you. I'm so glad that you made it. Danica is a student from many, many years ago at the New York Open Center, and she wrote to me, and I was just thrilled. It's always wonderful when students reappear in your life. People, it's got to have been at least 20 years. And like Mary, we met at the Open Center. So you will find as you do this, your exhalation is going to lengthen and lengthen and lengthen. And that should give you confidence that you're doing something pretty good. Harder for sound. This is where Kathy is right on the money in terms of the grabbing in the throat, because you know why? We think about making sound. And I'm at fault for sometimes saying something like that too. So our minds hear it as, I have to make sound now, and we grab into the throat. But it's not that, it's the air, once again. And the body-mind knows that you want sound. You don't have to do special things. You do have to be in your connection. You have to be here. And see, it triggers it, and it expands your rib cage. You've got intercostal muscles between every rib, and they're elastic. They can get very, very tight, and the rib cage can become very inflexible. That usually comes from being down in the legs. And the Alexander technique that's so well known that is what we work on. And Alexander really got quite famous in the medical community because he could help people with their breathing, because he could get their rib cages to free. So when the rib cage is tight, the diaphragm can't very well move. Now you see, you're learning a lot about how anatomy, physiology affects breath, affects your voice. I love doing the voice test because I can feel it. You're demanding from the diaphragm, so that's what really builds its strength. You know, you have to demand from it to sustain this air pressure in the lungs in order to vibrate the vocal cords, and so that's how it builds its strength. See, in that long inhalation, of course, we're not singing now, we're doing an exercise, we're working on our breathing so we can luxuriate in that inhalation. We inhale, what we expel is carbon dioxide in exhalation. We inhale is oxygen. That's efficiency in breathing. We have to, you know, our minds have to go to these physiological facts. Right? It helps us so much understand that. See, it's so different if I were to, I don't even want to demonstrate, grab in my throat, and to feel, you start to feel the air. You know your air, you know that exhalation. So going back to that, and getting the ear outside the head. And Yvette, you and I will do this, of course, but, you know, remember what we have. Thank you, Heather. Can't wait. Whispered counts of 10. Whispered counts of 10. So when you first hear that expression, whispered counts of 10, we think whispering and we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All of that is in my throat. All of that is in my throat. Everything is down. But I wanted this, right? Speech is a reflex. I do not need to make words. Articulation of word comes from speed of breath. And remember, yet again, I repeat this, but these things stay with me because when I hear them, when I'm told them, they make so much sense to me. A speech pathologist who worked with children told me this years ago at the Open Center. She said, you know, children who have dystonias in their body, areas of weakness in their muscles, are always speech delayed. And they're speech delayed not from any cognitive issue, but because they have weak diaphragms. So put that, you know, think about that it is the speed of breath which articulates the words. So if we labor to whisper, we're sort of thinking of it in one way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But what is the difference? Now you've got to figure this out. That's how art is transmitted, how this work is transmitted, is that you enter into my process. You let your creative minds go and you figure out my process. What is it that she's doing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What is the difference between that and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3? What is the difference? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Think about it for a second. I will tell you for me, I never, ever, 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 ever get tired of doing this, ever. Think of it. How many times I must do it? lessons, my own work, why don't I get tired of it? Why isn't it just something I do? Right? Boringly grinding through my exercises. Yeah, seems effortless. It's because I align with something. I know, please, it is nothing specific. It's not, I am aligning with the, what is that? That relationship. It's always about relationship. Remember, we've talked about that since day one. Remember the early, one of our first exercises, we don't do it anymore, maybe we should, the allowing hand. You know, how do you put a hand on yourself? Is it to feel, to look in, or can you really let something come to you? As soon as you do that, you stimulate the muscle. So it's that relationship. For me, it's what Kathy said. It's the curious ear. What will I discover? How do I enter into a place of what is going to get whispered to me? I think that's intuition. I think that's how you stimulate the intuition. It's certainly how you take an Alexander lesson, not at the beginning for sure, and maybe not for a while. We get to chair, our teacher puts hands on us, and we're in our heads and trying to feel and trying to see and trying to do the right thing and trying to get what the teacher's giving. But eventually, there's like something breaks through, and you just stay in this place that allows something to rise up into mind and understanding to rise up into mind. The same thing here. You see, if I thought of it as an exercise and something to do and get bored with, right? Or as one of my students said, a checklist. Okay, I've done that one, I've done this one. You know, I would probably grab for breath before I did it. That would be my habit. 1, 2, 3, right? Instead of here. And that has to be what we practice. How do we get immediately into that state? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We talk about it as non-doing. And when we first hear that language, non-doing, we think passivity, and nothing is further from the truth, but it's a very tricky language, non-doing. What does non-doing mean? Non-doing means that you're not pushing it out of you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But how do we describe the other state? You can only get it through your own intuition, as I demonstrate. It's really it. And I think you learned that. I certainly did with my great teachers, not every teacher for sure. But the ones that really lived what they were teaching, it gets absorbed into you. If you're an open student, if you're open, you just absorb it. And then it may take a long time, right? You're not going to get it during the lesson, but you eventually get an insight. Something just hits you. Yes, Hermine, and maybe you can't all hear it on the Zoom here. Is there a sound coming out of you when you do it the correct way? It's very faint. That's correct. That is correct. It is very faint, right? Because it's not pushed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Susan said, I have often felt in this work that it is a profound, or even more so, than any spiritual practice I have pursued. I feel that. Piero Ferrucci, who worked with Roberto Assagioli in psychosynthesis, and wrote a great book called What We May Be. It's actually, the institute is in Florence, and he's still alive. But he had some Alexander lessons with my teacher, John Nichols. John, graduated in the 70s, so he's been teaching many, many years. And he said to John that he felt that the Alexander technique was the only technique that came directly from a spiritual impulse. And, you know, we don't use that, but I've always remembered that. I like that very much. And I think that that's really what it is. I think that's the Michael Chekhov acting work for sure. It's, you know, understanding, connecting. And if we don't even want to use that term, we would say to a creative mind, to our creativity, to our intuition, to something beyond the literal, beyond the transpersonal, beyond the ego. So then if you take those whispered counts, and so whispered counts are just unbeatable, just like the voiceless is unbeatable for getting the movement in the diaphragm. And you see, you saw how long the whispered counts lasted. You're really getting movement going in that diaphragm. Now, when you go to voice again, you are building strength in the diaphragm. It is not going to last as long. So we go to the voice counts of 10, and default would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And believe me, folks, I've had students I've worked with this on for years, and that's exactly how they still do it. Because no one wants to work on it. Because it demands from us. We have to figure it out. And it's much easier to just jump and think of doing an exercise. I mean, I don't find that so. I find that very not great at all, but I get it. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is the difference between that and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number one, that triggers the reflex. But it's beyond it, isn't it? It is the ability, and this is, then we'll get right to our singing, but just to leave you with this, it is the ability to sustain the conditions for the hum. What do I mean by that? I mean that you are in that place of alignment. You're not trying to make sound. You hear the characteristic cry in the sound. And that comes, it's universal. And it comes from those core muscles communicating to the diaphragm. You know, again, repeating myself, but that singer at the Metropolitan Opera, Peter Mattei, when he was doing a Tristan, I forget, one of the Parsifal. And I think he's mortally wounded on stage. The entire opera, you know, he's there propped up with two people on either side with this big red wound. And, you know, they last him at intermission. It's always amazing to see these singers do heavy Wagner stuff and then walk off stage laughing and joking and able to have an interview. It's wonderful. It's just the way it should be. But he was asked about that, and he said, well, you know, singing and pain come from the same place. So it's not so hard. And, you know, so you hear that. So we are sustaining a hum as we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3. As compared to if we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there's no hum there, is there? There's no through line. There's no direction. And if we were really technically critical, we would say the person is not on vowels. You always have to be on the vowel. You cannot be in the consonant. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you see you're at the beginning of the word, you're in the consonant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. You're in the vowel. So we think about all of that. You know, it's a long process, and the more, you know, just like an Alexander technique that I say to students all the time when I have hands on them, I will say it is repeated sensory experiences. Listen, repeated sensory experiences that help us begin to understand. So, you know, we repeat and repeat and repeat, but every time I demonstrate, it's new. So it's not just going through a routine of exercises, but every single time It is reconnecting to something. That's behind our sows, right? That is behind when we do our sows and everything else that we do. So we do our sows. If we went so, hear that. So. Where is that coming from? Start to use your ear. It's always fun when students, I know maybe Zoom is much harder, I understand. But they'll say, I'm beginning to see it in another student. I'm beginning to hear it in another student. The difference between so, and so. What has more color? What communicates more? So. And can you hear that every single one is different? That is not me making every single one different. But so is all the same. Sometimes I'll do ma me me mo moo, ma me me mo moo, ma me me mo moo. And you hear the difference in tonality, you hear the difference in pitch variation when I do that, as compared to ma me me mo moo, ma me me mo moo, ma me me mo moo. Do you hear that? Ma me me mo moo, ma me me mo moo, ma me me mo moo, ma me me mo moo. So. And your self-teacher is this. If you feel good doing it, if you feel alive, if you are self-energizing and you can feel that, you know you're in good shape, you know you are on track. You know you're, quote unquote, in the direction. You know that you're getting that. So. And I think, just go around grooving, right? So that so has muscles too. So anything that you can do to start to rev that motor. And then we go to the singing, you can't worry about anything. So. Just, da 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 dee, yada ba ba ba. That's what you want to feel in your being. Right? You don't want to try to make a gorgeous sound, right? You're not so, right? You're not trying to gild the lily here. You're being truthful to who you are. So. See, it's that simple. So we go on. When you start doing that with a class, sometimes you will hear, of course, you've been doing it so long with me, but you will hear, you're not giving me time to breathe, I can't breathe. But the lesson is that your body breathes you. And when you are living music like that, your body is breathing. Would you believe that in between every little phrase, breath is coming in? Now listen, we are doing a tiny little exercise. Not much breath is leaving us, and so not much air is coming back in. Efficiency in breathing. What you exhale is carbon dioxide, you inhale is oxygen. You are keeping a flow of music going. You're not stopped, and if you are that focused on your process, you have no time to worry about your sound. You only are living music. Now, there is a big difference between being an autopilot and just doing it like an exercise. Oh man, I hate that. I see it and it's just horrible to me. The autopilot of just running through it as though it's a vocal warm-up. You can never think that way. You just can't. Every time, every single 5-note phrase is another opportunity to build that strength, to build that connection, to feel more enlivened in yourself from the music. Really, it's remarkable. You all know this. I say to you sometimes, really out of sorts, as we all are on occasion, more than on occasion. I come in and practice. Gone. And I think it's because of the focus. I think I focus outside myself. I focus with music. Music means more than the old, ego that is whatever, doing the hickaloo. And so it's very nourishing in that way. We go to our words, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Remember, we used to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3. See, defaulted 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or even 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Trying to do that. Feel that in your body. Don't try to make it in your body. It's not D D D D D. It's not that. You just feel it. You're in it. And you all have had this experience many, many, many times. You think of a song, or you start, you're doing the dishes or whatever, and a song, you're hearing a song in your head, or you're feeling that, you love it. We all have done that so much. And now we're sort of doing it with something that's more set. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Difference is 5, 4, 3. No, that's throat, right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Music comes to us. Music comes to us. There is an alignment. It comes to us. Hello, you. Right? It's not gene to it. It's, welcome. Welcome. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One more. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the genius of the body, mind, whatever you want to call it, the genius of it is that it focuses your voice. So we do not worry about head voice, chest voice, mouth resonance, all of that, because it is just the ear hearing the life of the note, the soul of the note. In that way, and that's like we hear outside ourselves, and it doesn't come right away, but the more that we are integrating, the more we're working the way we work, is uncanny. It's like something is out here that we hear and align with. Ne na nes, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne. And I love this because it teaches you that the nay is not nay. Hear the flatness in the tone? Ne na ne na ne. Gina's doing ne na ne na ne. Here, ne na ne na ne, ne na n. See, it's all a hum. Ne na ne na ne. Ne na ne na ne, 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 ne na ne na ne. Can you tell? My body was breathing me. Did you see me need to try to take breath? No. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. And the more we do that, and again, these things come into my head. I'm thinking of Anne-Marie and the beauty of the voice and everything. And yes, of course, that this is where it is. This is where the love of that music is, whether it's a ne-na-ne-na-ne exercise or singing an art song. Triads, huh? It energizes itself. So as we go higher like that, you could feel more and more and more energy. And what is happening there in your body is that it is sustaining that air pressure. As we get higher and higher, it is making more demand on that diaphragm to do the work, rather than, of course, the pushing. And you just stay with that and stay with that, and that builds a tremendous strength. If you go back to our ne na ne na ne, notice the tongue. I love this because if you really understand that it's this which moves the tongue, think of it, feel it, do the wrong. Ne na ne na ne, feel the size of the tongue overwork. Ne na ne na ne, can you feel that? Ne na ne na ne, what part of the tongue? When it comes from here, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne. And if you really got it, it's not going to feel like your tongue anymore. It may feel very weird to you that way. You start to feel very like these, it's not my tongue, what is that? Ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne. Notice the difference between that, what is going on for me, as compared to ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne. Right, I mean, I gilded the lily a little there, but not terribly. Ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne, ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne na ne. Can you hear the difference? Hear the difference in tonality. Difference in tonality, and some of you might say, well, it's lighter. Yeah, I'll buy that, but it would carry further. We can't forget that what was prized about Pavarotti, that huge voice, was the lightness in his voice. That's because it's all here. That's where we sing from, the resonators. So if we think of the tip of the tongue, what's our song that we do that is as challenging a song as we could possibly do? And yet we think it's very simple. The la la la, the little Palestinian folk dance. Why is it so demanding? It's because it is so gosh darn easy to go on automatic pilot and just sing it. And we know it so well, we just go off into another world and la 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 la, instead of renewing all the time. So if you were to speak it, it would sound like la 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 la. That's what people do, right? Not incorrect, everything's in the right beats. What's the difference? La 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 la. What is the difference? What do you feel inside yourself between the two ways? The first way I demonstrated and the second way. And that's how you learn. What is going on for you when you absorb and sense the second way? For me, it is the music that is filling me, the inherent energy in that music that I respond to, And every single second, now come on, I've been doing this for a very, 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 very long time, and I do not expect you to have the same level of focus. It takes years. It takes years. I had no idea what focus meant at the beginning. I really didn't, and I thought I was pretty focused, and I wasn't focused at all. So when I say focus, it's like every single second you are in response. Every single second. So in a way, you have no time to think about how you're sounding. But you also know by this point that what I said earlier at the beginning of our class, that what somebody would hear in your voice would be how you would have responded to music. And that's what's exciting to an audience. That's when they get energized. I want that. La, 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 la. Sort of think of everything that we did tonight. Think of Kathy and the jumping in the throat. See if you can catch when you jump, or grab for breath before you start, or maybe even grab for breath between phrases. Then you know you're sort of out. You're not in the living of the music. You're in the idea of singing a song. That's the difference. Let it surround you. La, 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 la. What if we said, okay, let's take the tempo down a little bit so it becomes a little slower, and see if we can keep our music going. La, 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 maybe even slower still. La, 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 let's do that again. And when we have the repeated lines, the last three lines, let's do the first one normal, second one will come way down in volume, and the third one will come back to normal, maybe a little bit more. Let's do it on that key again. Okay, we'll go up one. La 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 la. Let's do that again, just like that. La 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 la. Let's do that again. Full and with love. La 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 la. Final one. Ooh, we haven't done super fast. I don't know if I can, but let's try it. La 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 la. Ooh, one more like that. Maybe faster, I don't know. Anything is possible. Anything. All right, friends, let's gather about. And let me hear from you. Any observations, thoughts, comments?
It just was coming to mind about breath control. Like, people that talk about how you have to, before like a long note or high note is coming, to like control that breath and make. From what I'm hearing, it's like we should get out of. We shouldn't control the breath because we're only getting in our way when we're doing that.
Exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And you will start to notice, and especially if you hear great singers, and I'm of course super duper duper aware of this all the time. If you go hear classical singers or than that, and you see where breath naturally comes in and how phrasing happens and breath just comes in. So yeah, but is that we all went through that, right? We all did. I did. You take the breath, you hold, you do. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. So yeah. Other observations or comments or thoughts? Hi, Aida. I didn't get to say hello to you, but I knew you came in. Um, Susan, anything that you'd like to share? You have to unmute, my friend.
There we go. I got it. No, I'm just, I'm taking it. Like, so funny, oh gosh, am I such a Teflon person sometimes, and it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like a beginner, and that's okay.
You're okay, of course.
I was remembering something odd, doing the whispered counts, when I really be in that place where I'm really listening, it felt like being inside some magical cave, listening for an echo.
Yes,
It's this
that's exactly
incredible.
right.
But it was like that, and it's such an incredible thing,
It is such incredible. I've once again shared all of this with you, but in Dublin, there's a medieval church, and they have this structure outside. It's ancient, right? This is medieval structure, and it's called the Singing Hollow. And you put your head in the hollow, and you hum, and you do exactly that. And I say, well, that's doing our count to 10. But that's because it is such an incredible experience. You're absolutely right. So however we come to understand that, whether it is, I've sometimes said that, it's like being in an echo. We hear that. Wonderful. I remember in the subways in Boston, Cambridge, we go down there in the red line or whatever, and we'd wait for it, and we go, ha, 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 because you could hit the place in the, that's what music students do, right? You could hit the place in the subway where you had that experience of the overtones was coming at you. Any other final words of wisdom from anyone?
I had some thoughts. I was
Great.
just thinking, yeah, I realized how much I want to make this whole thing mystical, and I thought I was impervious to that. I thought I had both feet on the ground and I was, kind of like level-headed about it. But I find my mind going there because it's so mysterious.
Yes, that's
But
correct. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that there's always these moments where you use a certain kind of language that I feel like I haven't heard you use before. And those moments allow me to sort of see in for a second, see the truth, or what I think is the truth. And it's just mechanics. I feel like it's physical and it's mechanics. And it can feel spiritual when you're doing it right. But the practice itself is just so, it's as hard as it is, it's really simple. And
I
it
would
really
agree
is.
with you. And I think you have worded it in the most wonderful, wonderful way, right? Because it just shows us sort of the genius of the body. And yeah, I've heard that, oh, it's very spiritual, it's very mystical, but it's really not. It's creative. It's a
Yeah,
creative process, but you're right. It comes from that integration.
yeah. But I thought I was above that. I thought I was beyond that. But I think the fact that it's so hard to grasp makes me feel like it's unknowable. and
Yes.
I should just follow it like a devotee, follow it like a zealot and not ask too many questions. But yeah, it's I don't know. I like to be reminded of just how it's mechanics.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think about all those, years of Alexander lessons and still being that confused and trying to understand it and reading the books and all of that. And, it's just something opens up in us. And I write about this because I believe that this is the way it is. And I think it was absolutely that way for me, that once I started to, what Darren is saying, integrate those inner muscles to really bring that to consciousness. And I have to say it like that because they are involuntary muscles. We never can forget that. Never, ever, 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 ever. That is why it's so hard. They are involuntary muscles, and they whisper to us and we bring them to consciousness. And once that is part of that, it seems like something else opens up in us. That improvisational sense, something opens up. And I think that's where I really appreciate what Darren said tonight, because that's really what it is. In a way, it is mechanics, isn't it? Terrific. Thank you. Wonderful way of ending a class. Beautiful insights, everyone. And we wish Will
Happy marriage.
billion congratulations and a beautiful wedding. We're so happy for you, really happy. You're such a great class member. All right, dear friends. So we will see each other soon. Have a great, if we don't have another review before, August or whatever, we will definitely do it again. And then we will see each other in the fall. So
Happy
take
summer.
good care. Write to me with anything and we will